What's going on, everyone? It's Bales, and welcome back to another episode of AFL Fantasy Head2Head. We put two players up against each other, and we see who we're going to pick between the two. This is episode 4 of the series. If you haven't checked out the episode with Warney, we did Tristan Cherry, Brody Grundy. The episode with Liam, where we did Tom Stewart and Jack Sinclair, and then the last episode with Mini Mutt, where we did Connor Rosie and Zach Butters. Make sure you go and check all those 3 out as well. If you're enjoying this video, also make sure you do leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, on our road to 2,000 subscribers. But joining me today to talk about two of the premium midfielders of the competition, both over $1 million, is a man that you'll know as Dunkley's Donuts from HatChat, and also just a legend. And another one of my mates from South Australia is Jake. Mate, Jake, how you doing?
Thank you, mate. You said that Warney was the first one. I was very happy to know that I wasn't following the Warn dog, but then you told me that I'm following the Monk, which I know that Mini Monk and his pedigree is far superior than mine as well. So, hey, we'll have a bit of fun. We'll talk about a couple of our boys and see if we can give some insights, mate.
Yeah, so now I'm really looking forward to this chat, actually, because I think, arguably, that, like, so probably besides support duo, these two are really, really sort of well matched up against one another. And we're talking about Jake's very own Marcus Bontempelli, and then my own Jordan Dawson. So both over $1 million, Bont 1.06 million, and Jordan Dawson 1.02 million. So I did suggest to Jake pre-video, could we go maybe the other way, and maybe I'll do Bont, he does Dawson, but we ended up landing on he will do his boy Bont, and I'll go for my boy Jordan Dawson. So Jake, mate, why should people be picking Bont and paying up the most expensive midfielder in the competition in 2024?
Well, I mean, I think there's the one thing that we always talk about in this game, and that is the eye test. And if I think of any player in the entire AFL that passes the eye test, I always think of Marcus Bontempelli. As I'm sure to most, I think there is an air about the man and his performance and his ability to just rack up across all of the stat lines that just screams fantasy prowess. And what we saw in 2023, which is a weird word to describe the Bont, is a breakout, because he's been an elite player of the competition for many years now, but we've seen him average, the low hundreds for quite a few years, a bit more use in the forward line, and just kind of taking away from his ability to have consistent 30 disposal games. But in 2023, we really used him. The Doggies really used him to his absolute best, and we saw consistency across the entirety of the season, and a 117 average. I think a 15 plus increase on his average from the season before. So massive uptick for a player who was already an elite member of the competition. I think what we saw, interestingly enough, was the start of the year was quite a slow start. There was a lot of talk about the Bont in the preseason. I know Sanch as well in the HatChat group were really keen on the Bont. And 390s to start the year, from my memory, was a bit of a tough watch. It was, we're kind of worried, hang on, it was just the middling Bont that we've seen in the past in fantasy circles. And from that point onwards, I think people did trade him out round 3, and you'd be kicking yourself, I'd imagine, looking back on season 2023. Yeah. But I think we saw 2 sub-100 scores for the remainder of the year, 540s. I think, Bales, you got to enjoy me one night at the pub with the Bont as captain, going absolutely bananas for, I think, his one. Yeah, I think it was a 140, 151, 148. Yeah. So that was a great night. Maybe less so for Bales, a bit more for myself. I
love the Bont. It was good to win. I love the Bont. So.
Yeah. So, look, I think there's all of those positives about what we saw from the Bont last year. And, like, what's changed at the Bulldogs? We're in a very similar position. We've probably slightly underperformed, and he is our leader. We saw him play every game last year, unlike most of the top players in the game. We saw them miss 1 or 2. Bont is quite a durable man, and he finds his way to fight through even those injury games. So, an incredibly low floor, a consistent ceiling of 140s plus, plays every game. I mean, what's there not to like, Buzz?
Yeah, no, exactly right. And even just looking at his numbers here, like as you mentioned, his floor is just so high. Like you mentioned, the 390s to start the year, and like after he had the 2 scores below, but it was an 86 against the Giants and a 90 against Hawthorn. And I believe both of them were sort of tag affected games, especially that Hawthorn game. So, like, if you look at all the numbers here, from after that point, he had 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 games from the remaining. What's that from the remaining what are we looking there? From only 19 games, we scored over 110, which is crazy. And a lot of those were 120s, and he obviously was able to get those 140s and even that 150 against the Tigers. I think that the one thing with Bont this year, though, that people obviously turned off by is just the fact of that starting price of $1.06 million. But in a year where a lot of these players, like your Gouldens, your Tom Greens, your Tim Tarantos, Clayton Oliver, different circumstances, we don't know what's going on with them, but a lot of these top price players have got question marks on them leading into the year, where they've got those like the Goulden, Tom Greens, got the early buy, or as we said, Oliver, we don't know what's going on, or maybe someone like a Dacos, for example, in another line's got an early tag and a buy as well. Do you see, is there a world where you could pay up for a guy like Bont, solid captain option week in, week out, and the fact he doesn't miss a game the first 6 weeks because of an opening buy? What are your thoughts of paying up for him this year?
Oh, I think it's a case on how you play the game, right? So, HatChat, we spoke value a lot. If you want to be winning at Hat specifically, getting the best value early, making sure that you're increasing your squad's depth, your salary cap, as well as getting the points scored is the most important thing. There's two very different ways to play the game, right? There's one which is beating your mates week in, week out and holding up the trophy at the end of the year, which is very fun. And I know I enjoy that just as much as every other man and lady that listens to these shows. But there's also winning a hat. So I think when you're going down that avenue, paying up is challenging. But in a forward line, which we know that there's elite scorers aren't there this year, most of them now have midfield only status, where we've got a few really exciting rookies coming through. If you've got enough guys that are underpriced, I don't think anyone's going to question that you can lock Marcus Bontempelli in for a fantastic season, looking at 115 plus again, and a captain option week in, week out.
Yeah, exactly right. I was just looking at his opening sort of fixture there, but I've sort of realised halfway in looking at all the fixtures, like it's sort of a bit of a mixed one. You've got some good matchups, bad matchups, but it doesn't really matter with a guy like Bont or probably the guy we're going to be talking about. I think they're both fixture proof. It just depends if they might get a hard tag or two. They might sort of pop an 80, but I don't. These two players, the good thing about them is because they fill up so many of the stat lines. If one thing's taken out, they're going like their marks, they can tackle their way to a good score, kick some goals. So I think that really fixtures just doesn't really matter because they just fill up different stat lines. So so you said he averages, you reckon he's around that 115 mark again. You reckon he goes pretty well once again, maybe trying to push for that Brownlow that he's probably been robbed of a couple of times.
I must admit, I had a quick look, and top 3 Brownlow pricing, unsurprisingly, $11 at the moment. Your boy Jordan Dawson sitting below Tom Liberatore, which I might add is a bit obscene. Someone's got that wrong in the Brownlow market. If Tom Liberatore wins one and Jordan Dawson doesn't, I would be incredibly surprised. I'd probably take the lay on that bet, but nonetheless, he's closer to Brownlow favourite for a good reason, and we'll see what happens. I can only hope that this what's happened. That we get this happen this year.
Yeah, so as you probably know, Jake, sorry to our Victorian viewers and stuff, but hey, where's Jordan Dawson from? Where's Tom Liberatore on? That's all I'm gonna put up there. So, but let's talk about a little bit about Jordan Dawson. So again, he's coming in priced over $1 million at 1.02 million. I think again, very much like we spoke about with Bont, it's just the fact that he's just consistent. Like he just doesn't put up very many bad scores. Like again, doing the numbers before this. From rounds, that is Supercoach just popping up to me there here. From rounds 4 through to round 20, which is a pretty good sample size of 15 games. They obviously missed the one game with the bye round, averaging 121.6, which is quite significant. I think Bont averaged about 120 odd from a certain point, I think post round 3 last year. So that's why these two players are really good to sort of compare between the two. But Jordan Dawson, again, putting up a lot of these 110 plus scores. So, I'm just doing here from round 4 onwards, you put 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 scores over 110. But I think a lot more of those are 120. So, has that really high floor. And obviously that highlighted by that 172 points he scored against Collingwood, where he just did literally everything and probably could have got a free kick towards the end there, but that's fine. We'll move on from that. We're into a new season. Still salty the Crows who make finals, but Dawson, just again, a lot of people had that perception. Will have that perception this year, Jake, of the fact that he's lost defender status. He's just going to be straight mid. Where do you sit with Dawson? Because I think he's a good pick. I think if people are looking at the likes of like his teammate Rory Laird, you might be choosing between one of the two. And a lot of people might go Jordan Dawson because of the him being younger, being the captain, can fill every single stat line. But what do you see with Dawson obviously losing defender status and how you see his 2024 season going?
Oh, look, like we said, these boys are comparable in so many ways, and I think this is just proof of that. We go through. I'm not worried about the tag risk. Yes, it could happen, but I don't think that's particularly much of an issue. I think personally, I'd probably tag Rory Laird, just in my own opinion. Just I
I
think he's
do.
got.
No.
I don't know. I think he's got more of an impact of being tagged, whereas Jordan Dawson challenging to be tagged. That's probably the point that I would make. I think Jordan Dawson, 9 scores over 120. He had the highest score than Bont with that 172.
Yeah.
Bont with a lot more scores over 140, but Dawson with a lot more scores over 120. So he has that slightly more consistent, higher middling score
Yeah.
without having the consistent ceiling that the Bont has. And for all those reasons, I think that's really exciting about his prospects in 2024. Probably my main concern is how he finished the year. You know, the Bont started the year pretty slow with those 390s. But I think Jordan Dawson finished the year with 4 scores sub 105 from memory,
Yeah.
390s. And I must admit, I noticed in that patch, I think he had 3 or 4 games with 3 or 4 free kicks against. That seemed to be the
Yeah.
difference maker. Most of his other stats stayed pretty consistent, but he was actually finding quite a few free kicks against. And I don't know exactly where that was coming from. I'm not sure if that's something that has crept into his game or if there's something about his game that has now stood out to the umpires. But it definitely meant that he regressed to finish the year. And that's my one concern with him
Yeah.
and getting to the bottom of that.
And that was the next point I was actually going to discuss now is the fact that, so I think the big thing in the last 6 games was Matt Crouch coming back into the side. So it didn't seem to impact Rory Laird as much. It was Dawson that took a bit more of the hit. I think Laird still was able to get his hundreds and his 120s and 110s, but it was Dawson last 3 average of 97 and the last 5 average of 104.8. So, and as you say, in his last sort of 4 games, his high score was 105. So yeah, it's a little bit of a flag with that, and the fact that he is so highly priced. Is that the one thing that the flag you see with Dawson is the fact that Matt Crouch came back in the side. They offered him a 2-year contract in the off season, so it's not like Matt Crouch is just going to go back to Sandford. Like they wouldn't have given him a 2-year contract if that was the case. So I think Matt Crouch is best 22 for the Crows, and he's in that midfield. So that's sort of where Dawson, his maybe ceiling probably comes down a bit. So is that something that maybe sways you away from Dawson, or do you think maybe back into the season, long season, first full season in the midfield, maybe you think that going into this year, another full preseason under the belt, that it's not really going to matter too much?
Yeah, I think the interesting part is that Dawson definitely plays a different style to Matt Crouch. Like you look at Dawson, we talk about him and the Bont as elite kicks in the competition. These boys are basically the same, aren't they? But
Both
Matt
left
Crouch,
footers, yep. And probably about the same
Matt
height as
Crouch,
well.
yeah. Well, it's hard to look. I
I
think
would
that's a bit
say
of age.
they weigh. I would say they weigh the same, but hey, we might not be able to see that soon.
We don't know that anymore. We don't know that.
Yeah.
No. Matt Crouch is an accumulator, handball happy. So they play very different styles. And I would suggest that, Jordan Dawson probably hadn't actually had the chance to play in the midfield with Matt Crouch quite realistically, or very limited minutes up until that point. So I'm sure there's a lot of work going on in the off season into finding a way that works with that as the midfield rotation. So for that reason, I'm not massively worried because I think Jordan Dawson's the captain. He's clearly the future of the Crows. The focus point is going to be on his distribution and therefore him being the centre of that midfield. So it might have just been, like you said, back end of a really big first season in the midfield, maybe a bit of fatigue as well.
Captain, yeah.
Could have been a couple of things, and I'm happy to forgive him somewhat, but it'll be interesting to see how that dynamic works. Definitely.
Yeah, exactly right. I agree. I think that the whole narrative about sort of a lackluster finish to the last few games of the year, Matt Crouch been, I think it's a little bit overblown. I think that Dawson's still going to average 110 plus. I think that he's got the capabilities to go. I think if he went a full set, he's got the capabilities to average 120. Like he averaged 120 from rounds 4 to rounds 20. So it's a pretty big sample size. So just a few sort of quieter games to start, a few quieter games to finish. If you put those better games in there as well, then I think 115 plus average, very similar Bont, which is why this is such an interesting discussion with these two players because they're just so similar with everything. So, but we'll get to who we're going to pick between the two. So I want to get just who you're going to pick first because then I want to do a tiny bit of discussion after this about both players. So pretty much just like a sentence answer who you'd be picking between the Bont and Dawson in 2024.
Well, I actually didn't preface this at the start of the call, so you don't actually know, but I only have one of these two players on my side at the moment, and that is actually Jordan Dawson. The reason I picked Jordan Dawson is purely the $50,000, the 4-point differential on their average. and the likelihood that they both will have fantastic seasons, and therefore I'll look at the value.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I'm probably going to side with Dawson just as well. But it's for me, if you've got that 40,000 extra, I'd be happy to pay up for Bont. I just think Bont's probably the safer one, the average 115 plus. I think between the two, but I guess maybe you could say Dawson's got potentially the higher ceiling. Maybe I don't know. I think both have got. And when I say I mean just because both of them could put up monster scores. But I just think as well, I think having an Adelaide midfielder could be a good path this year, just with sort of the improvement. There is points to go, and I'm not saying that Big
You're
Boss is
not
trying to
picking.
move
You're not picking Dawson if you're picking one Adelaide midfielder, Bales. You don't have to lie. You don't have to lie to the listeners. They know who you're picking.
Yeah, exactly right. But no, the point that I was going to be discussing now with you actually was your thoughts on paying over $1 million for a midfielder. So obviously you mentioned you've got Dawson in my side. I currently don't have either in my side. Dawson's been the one that has come into my side once or twice. I haven't looked at Bont so far this year, which is crazy because last year he was in my side for essentially the whole pre-season, which is I was quite confident with him going well. So what are your thoughts of paying over $1 million for someone in 2024?
Yeah, it's a very challenging conversation, and you're spot on, right? The reason that we all picked Bont last year is we saw a bit of upside, and we got that upside, 15 points of it, in fact. Whereas at 117, where is the upside? We've seen it in the past. I know that Jaden posts a whole bunch of stats, but we've talked about it even prior to this season, and the regression for the top three midfielders season on season. I think we see 90% of them regress. 90% of the top.
Look at Laird last year, and look at Tukin Steele last year from the year before as well. So
yeah, I think the number is similar to 90% of the top three midfielders from the season prior regress the following year, and the reason for that is they have an outstanding year and they have back-to-back outstanding years, and not just back-to-back, but growth on growth in following years is really challenging. So that's the main issue we have with the Bont, is him sustaining that again. And again, if we're talking value, where is the value if he's at his absolute peak? Even if he just keeps it the same, you've got no value, you've got no growth there. With Dawson, I see a little bit of growth, and that's why he's in my team at the moment. But the challenge, right, is we talk about Andrew Brayshaw as an example. Almost, but not quite $1 million. But you could say he has even slightly more value. And you look at a few of those guys in the 950K range, you could argue there's a few of them there. I think a personal view is you probably need two guys in that 950 plus range. I just think with the sides this year, there's a couple of value plays like an LDU and whatnot, but I'm not seeing any mid-price midfielders scream out that we've had in the past couple of years. So for that reason, I think two 950K plus guys, but I'm okay that there's definitely a few in that list, and you can avoid spending $1 million to spend that money elsewhere.
Yeah, agreed. And obviously you mentioned Brayshaw as well. If people want to know my thoughts on him, go and check the HatChat write-up on the HatChat Instagram, which we'll link in a sec. My write-up thing, I won't steal anything because I'll talk about him potentially in another episode with someone, potentially later this week. But yeah, so we'll talk about him then. But yeah, I think he's in for a very, very good year as well. So I think that is where we'll cut the episode off. But let us know in the comments below what you think of Marcus Bontempelli and Jordan Dawson in 2024. Either of them in your side or none of them in your side. So let us know in the comments below. But Jake, thanks for coming on, mate. So obviously always a pleasure having you on the channel. Where can the people find you on the socials, and where can people find not only the HatChat podcast, but also you got some cool stuff happening on Instagram as well and on Twitter, and let us know what you got planned in 2024 with the boys.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, of course, you can find me at Dunkley's Donuts. I'm starting to pick up being active on Twitter again. It's been pretty quiet over the off-season, but we'll certainly work on that. You can find the podcast on at HatChat AFL on most platforms. So that's Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. X, of course, I should say that. I'll get there eventually. Maybe Elon will be happy with me in 2025. The podcast, they'll probably be starting at the end of January again, which is exciting. We did release one pre-Christmas episode for those guys that want to get their feet
very
wet
relevant,
at this time of year. There's some great recap on the draft and trade period, but we'll get our teeth in by the end of the month. But as a lead up for everyone on our Instagram, we're doing a player a day, specifically whatever day of January it is, a player with that Guernsey number, that jumper number, that we think is relevant or should be talked about. And just giving our opinions and our likelihoods of them starting on our team. And we've had a couple of special guest write-ups, Bales being one of them, and Liam from the AFLW Free Kick pod as well. So Yeah, fantastic. Bit of fun to get everyone excited for the impending fantasy season, and hopefully speak to a few of you guys in the next few weeks.
Yeah, it'll be very, very fun. We're starting to ramp up now. I'm getting into the sort of the mid to part of January, and then later part of January. Then you got February, and all of a sudden footy's going to be here. We got starts on like around the 22nd or something of February with the match sims and preseason. Then you got all the opening round and then round one kickoff. So it's going to come in no time. So looking forward to it. But if you guys did enjoy the video, make sure you do leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. On our road to 2,000 subscribers by the end of the season, will be fantastic. So that's the goal. And also let us know in the comments below as well what you think of the series so far. We obviously did it last year. This year we're going to have a lot more guests on, a lot more episodes. So let us know in the comments below what you think of the episode of the series. So social media links in the description below. Make sure you're going to follow me across all those, and we'll catch you in the next episode with potentially another member of HatChat, talking about a couple of the top forward line premiums, probably a couple of the only premiums we've got in the forward line. So if you're interested to discuss those two with another HatChat member. So until that episode, we'll catch you guys then. So we're out. Cheers.